Welcome. As part of NUS's Clean campaign, we have previously had the Vice Chancellor answering students' questions. Today, we have the pleasure of Don Foster, MP for Bath, answering our questions. Welcome, Don. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The higher education bill, which it was hoped would address many of the current unresolved issues facing the students and the sector, has been shelved. In light of this, what do you see as the next steps for reform in higher education?
I think what we're doing at the moment is having much more detailed consultations. Clearly, one of the big issues that's affected students and would-be students has been all the issues around the tuition fees. And one of the things we need to do is to see how that settles down, any changes that are needed in that respect. And then we've got to look at issues to do with research funding. There's a lot of work to be done around that sort of area. I'm delighted that in the recent budget we've had some additional money for science research, crucially important. So those are the sort of issues we want to consult on more widely before we bring forward further legislation.
How do you feel about concerns raised that these consultations will be done in back rooms rather than out in the public eye?
Well, I hope very much that anybody watching this will see this as a call to them to have their say. It is crucially important that you don't have backroom discussions because, frankly, transparency, openness is absolutely critical so that then people feel that their voice is being heard and then they can see whether or not that voice is listened to in the draft legislation that comes forward. So I'm all in favour of NUS, members of the union here, students right across the country and all of the staff and all of those who work within our universities get involved in that debate.
Well, we're very happy to hear that. There has been a lot of talk recently about hidden costs. So essentially, textbooks, lab equipment, field fees. Do you think the university should be including these things in the £9,000 fee?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we've done is leave it to individual universities to sort out the details of the finance. One of the great things, and there are a lot of very difficult things in the decisions about tuition fees, but one of the good things is that, of course, people from less well-off backgrounds are now for the first time again getting direct grants to help them go to university. Indeed, the overall package does give much more support to very many students, and in particular to part-time students who of course got a very rough deal under the previous regime. Now within that additional funding, universities who are hard-pressed, as every part of the country is pressed given the state of the economy at the present time, they are going to have to look at these sorts of issues. But it is a tough time and I think everybody has to accept that.
Okay. So what is your view on the lack of cohesive government support for postgraduate study, particularly a funding system for these students?
Well, postgraduates have always been very difficult. On the one hand, we had part-time students doing undergraduate courses and they were given little or no help in the past. Now I'm delighted that notwithstanding the difficult decisions on tuition fees, we've been able to help them. The issue for postgraduates is much more difficult because of people have already had very often state support, state funding for their undergraduate courses. The level of support we can afford to give for people doing postgraduate courses, which is going to help them enormously in the sort of money that they're going to earn in the future, is clearly a very difficult one. Although, with the additional money for some of the research councils, that is going to help them provide some additional support to students doing postgraduate courses.
When do you see these issues around postgraduates being addressed, though? Because over the last year in particular, government has been actually quite quiet on the issue of postgraduates. Every time it was raised, it seemed to be more of a, it's too complicated, we'll deal with it later. It's not very reassuring.
No, I mean, clearly it is very difficult. But let me just remind everybody that we're in an economic situation where today, as you and I speak, this country will spend £120 million just today alone to pay the interest on the nation's debt. For every £4 that we spend at the moment on services, including education, we're having to borrow one additional pound to help meet those costs. So it's a very difficult economic climate, and it's perhaps not surprising that some issues are not getting addressed as quickly as those directly involved in them would like, but it is because of the very difficult economic situation.
Do you think then it triggers a debate about whether education is actually worth that money then? And where would you fall on that side of the debate?
I mean, I mean, somebody once said that the human race is between education and catastrophe. And it really is important that we understand the vital importance to the economic future of this country and therefore to the well-being of everybody to absolutely appreciate the vital importance of education. But we have to then question, where do we put very short resources? And one of the things the coalition government has done is said, look, let's try and give everybody the best possible start. That's why, for example, we put a lot more money into providing support for early years education, and in particular £2.5 billion being invested to support children from less well-off backgrounds in our school system. That at least gives them the better chance of being able to benefit from a university degree. So that's where the priority has been. I understand that's disappointing to both students and to postgraduate students, but that has been the priority, and I think it was the right priority to make.
All right. Are there clear financial benefits, moving now slightly to local Bath issues? Are there clear financial benefits to living at home? Are you planning any action to encourage local students to go to universities in Bath?
Look, I mean, one of the crucial things is that people are able to go to the university that will deliver for them the course that most meets their needs, the one that they're going to be most interested in. Everybody knows, I mean, you know, the opportunity to move away from home, to live in a university town, live on the university campus if accommodation is available, is a great experience for young people. And clearly I'm not going to suggest that you know, one is better than the other, because individuals will make their own mind up. What we've got to try and do in these difficult financial circumstances is make that a possibility. But undoubtedly, if you go to the vast majority of other countries, a lot of students, because of the high cost of the university courses, will live at home to reduce the cost. I hope that very many people get the opportunity, if they want to, not to have to do that.
Okay. Bath and North East Somerset are moving forward with plans to curb student housing through the introduction of an Article 4 direction in Bath. What is your view on this?
Well, first of all, they're not planning to curb student housing. I mean, that would be a completely wrong interpretation of what's happening. I mean, the so-called Article 4 directive is all about trying to find the balance between houses for families, particularly affordable homes for those people who we really do rely on to do the services, people with relatively low-paid jobs but who provide the services on which we all rely. We have a huge problem of shortage of affordable homes, and houses and properties for students to live in. And what we've been able to do in recent years is to allow the university itself to expand on campus to provide more student accommodation. We've been able to provide more specialist student accommodation within town, and there are plans for more of that to come forward, and some recent announcements have been made about that. So it's about getting the balance right, but it's not about curbing it. There's no intent to reduce the level of accommodation we've got. But if we continue to see in some parts of the city more and more family homes converted into houses of multiple occupation for students and other single people, then we will be taking away the affordable accommodation and changing the whole nature of the structure of that area of the city. So I think it's right that the council can put a cap on how many more houses are converted into houses of multiple occupation, providing we also make arrangements for alternative forms of student accommodation, which is what we're doing.
Well, be that as it may, the sort of attitude we've gotten from councillors on the issue does seem to be more in the direction of almost HMOs as a student issue. And actually in our interactions, we haven't felt it's been massively productive. Do you feel it appropriate that the local cabinet is seemingly choosing to ignore valid concerns raised by residents of HMOs, including students, on the issue?
Well, I genuinely don't think they are doing that. I don't think they are ignoring the voice of students. I've been here on campus, I've talked to members of the Students' Union, I've talked to very many students about the issue, I've done a number of interviews on the issue and had discussions with people about it. I genuinely don't think, from the members of the Cabinet who I've talked to, that the attitude towards students that you're implying is the correct one. I mean, we have two universities here in Bath, both of them are crucially important to us, the economy of the city. They create a lot of jobs. It's great to have the students come here. Many of them stay and get involved in jobs. One of the things we've got to do is to get more of the students who are educated here at our two universities staying and working in the local economy. So we're working hard at that. So I understand how important the students are for economic reasons, social reasons, all of the voluntary work that very many students do here in the city and the surrounding area, crucially important. I'm a great fan of having two universities. I'm a great supporter of the universities and of the students and want to do all I can, as do members of the Cabinet, want to ensure that we have homes and properties fit for students to live in. But we've got to get the balance right at a time when we're really tight for housing and property in this city.
Well, thank you. We're happy to hear that, and hopefully we'll continue to work on that issue with you as others.
And we'll work with you on it too. It's a two-way process.
That's all the time we have, unfortunately, today. Thank you for your time, Don, and thank you for listening.